guided practice for 9-5. So they are, for question number 1, going back to the visual learning question about the cornbread. So for this question, they said, in the example at the top of page 552, suppose that 4 people were sharing half of the cornbread equally. What fraction of the original cornbread would each person get? Draw a picture or use objects to help. So in the last problem on the visual learning, they were dividing half by 3 people. So this time we have the half that's left, and instead of dividing it between 3 people like they did before, we're now going to divide it between 4 people. So same idea. If you're doing a picture, it's going to be, I'm cutting what I have into 4 pieces. So it's half, the half that I have out of the whole, but this time I'm dividing by 4 people. I'm splitting between 4 people, and they want to know what 1 piece is when I look at the whole cornbread that was originally there. So again, we have to think about it in terms of this portion at one time existed too. So when I do my cuts here, I'm going to also cut straight across here. So this half was eaten already, but it's still a part of the whole. So this person that eats this piece, they're getting 1 piece out of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So they're getting 1/8 of the whole. When I look at it in terms of the number model, same idea, and we're still following that same process that we did when we do division. So we're doing, put my 1 as my denominator. Now I can do my flip and multiply. So flip my fraction, change it to multiplication, multiply across. 1 times 1, 1, 2 times 4, 8, and that's my 1/8. So regardless of how many pieces we divide that remaining half into, it's going to be the same process each time. We're still going to use the 1/2 because that's what's left. We're going to multiply it by whatever whole number they say we're splitting it between. If we split it between 6 people, it would be divide by 6, and then we would flip and do times 1/6, and so on. Okay, for number 2, we are going to try a couple different things because we want to, it's not really a guessing question. We want to make sure that we really understand what the question is asking and why we're answering the way we are. Is it a greater than or less than type of question? So their question is, when you divide a unit fraction, and remember, a unit fraction is a fraction that has 1 as my numerator, and it can have anything as my denominator. So we'll try 3 of them. We'll do 1/2, we'll do 1/5, and we'll do 1/7. And obviously you can try this with any fraction at all as long as 1 is your numerator. And they said, when you divide a unit fraction by a non-zero whole number greater than 1, will the quotient be greater than or less than the unit fraction? So the number that I'm dividing by, again, has to be greater than 1, and it can't be 1 because we already know that with multiplication, because eventually I'm going to multiply them, we know that when we multiply by 1, we end up with the same answer. So if they're asking me greater than or less than, that's why I need to start with something larger than 1. So we can do divide by, pick any number that you want. Let's say 3. For this one, we'll do 6. For this one, we'll do 8. So what they want to know is, when I get my final answer, my quotient, is my quotient going to be bigger or smaller, greater than or less than what I originally started with, my unit fraction? So for this one, for example, remember we're going to do 1/2. This is going to be 3/1, and then we're going to flip it, so it now looks like that. And my answer then is going to be 1/6. So 1/6 compared to 1/2. Think about which one is larger. When I go here, same thing, 1/5 divided by 6/1, flip it, 1/5 times 1/6. So I flipped my fraction, I did my multiplication, my answer is 1/30. 1/30 compared to my unit fraction, 1/5. And then finally, 1/7 divided by 8/1. 1/7 times, flip it, 1/8 gives me 1/56. Quotient, original unit fraction. So again, their question was, and they don't want a number answer here, they said, when I do this division, will the quotient be greater than or less than the unit fraction that I started with? So are these fractions greater than or less than the fractions that we started with? So if you're not sure, think about it in terms of, let's say, candy bars, something that we can all say that we have seen, we work with. Would you rather have half of a candy bar, or would you rather have a sixth of a candy bar? So this one's cut into 2 pieces, 2 big pieces, you're getting one of the 2. If it's cut into 6 pieces, you're obviously getting a smaller size, which means this one is going to be less than. Same thing here, you're getting 1/5 of a candy bar, so you're getting 1 piece of a candy bar that's cut into 5 pieces, so the pieces are going to be fairly big. Here, they're cutting the candy bar into 30 pieces, you're only getting 1. So again, it's less than. And then the same thing here, 1/7, you're getting 1 of 7 pieces. Here, you're getting 1 of 56 pieces. So on each of those, our numbers our pieces are getting smaller and smaller. Because they all are unit fractions, all we need to do to compare them, so this one also is less than, all we need to do to compare them is look at the denominator. As the denominator on a fraction gets larger, the pieces get smaller. Okay, so if you think about that big base 10 block, the flat, we know a flat has 100 little blocks on it, so one of those little blocks on the big flat, 1/100th is going to be a really tiny piece. If I look at any of these fractions, you can see, and if I wanted to draw a picture of it too, I can say 1/2, but as I start cutting it down, this portion is going to be my 1/6. Okay, so if you can remember that, as the denominator gets bigger, the pieces get smaller, then you can see why it's less than. Okay, so if you want to try that with any other unit fraction, you can. Again, the reason why they said not to use 1 is because 1 would give me the same exact answer that I started with. So if I did, for example, let's say I had 1/6 divided by 1, I would end up making that 1/1. When I flip 1/1, I get 1/1. So when I do my multiplication, 1 times 1 is 1, 6 times 1 is 6, I end up with the same number that I started with. That's why they wanted something larger. Okay, and then the last section on the guided practice, they gave us this rectangle, and they want us to use the rectangle, which is cut into 4 pieces, in order to solve the problems on 3 through 6. So I'm going to use the rectangle for 2 of them, and then I will just do the multiplication for the other 2. So for number 3, we had 1/4 divided by 2. So when I'm looking at what is here, this section, right, is 1/4 of the whole, okay? I'm going to take that and I'm going to divide it by 2. So again, think about it as you can do the cornbread or the lasagna or the candy bar. So when I cut that 1/4 into 2, we're talking about what is this person's share. But again, we have to consider that the rest of it was also cut the same way. So this person would be only getting that one section, which means they're getting one piece out of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So they're getting 1 out of the 8 pieces. Again, it works because we do the 1 under the 2, we flip 1/4 times, that's my fraction flip, and then 1 times 1, 1, 4 times 2, 8. That's my 1/8. So for number 4, it's the same idea, but this time they are cutting it into 4 pieces. So I'm going to take that same rectangle and we're going to do this, but now we're not getting all of this, we're only getting that one little section up there. Okay, so when I do this one now, it's going to be, they said 1/4 divided by 4. So we cut it into 1, 2, 3, 4, and same idea. So we're doing flip 1/4, 1 times 1, 1, 4 times 4, 16, and I would make that a multiplication, and you can see I have 16 pieces there. Okay, so that was with the picture. They also say that you can use objects. So if you have, like, you want to use like pennies or something that you have laying around the house, you can also do that. For the last 2, I'm just going to do the equations, because I think once you get the hang of this, it's probably easier to do it without the pictures anyway. The last 2, we have 1/2 divided by 2 and 1/2 divided by 4, and you may be able to look at it already and see how you're going to be multiplying. So on this one, I know my 1 is going down there, so I understand that when I flip it, it's going to be 1/2 times 1/2, which gives me 1/4. So for this one, without even doing the flip, again, I know that I end up multiplying those 2 numbers when I'm doing the unit fraction. Just be careful because it's not going to always be a unit fraction, but I know for this one then my answer is going to be 1/8 because I know that 2 times 4 is 8. It works again because I end up doing this, which gives me that. Again, a lot of this is just building upon the previous lessons, so I think you're starting to really understand, based on what I'm seeing, the division and doing the flip of the fractions and everything.